Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining in and absolutely on time. We really, really do appreciate it. But we're going to give a couple of minutes before we kick in. So grab a pen, grab a notebook because there's a lot of takeaways from the masterclass today. And we should be starting in another 2 to 3 minutes. And in the meantime, for anyone that's joining in for the first time, we usually do an interactive session before we kick the masterclass. So you would see a QR code on your screen. It's just to get warmed up with the topic of the conversation today. So you can scan the code, or you could also click on menti.com on your browser, and you'll see a code right up here on top. You could use that and just join in. As soon as we're ready to begin the session, we'd run through a few questions, just get a pulse, and then we're ready to go. Whenever you are in, what I'd also request for you is you'll see a thumbs up on the bottom right of your screen. Just click on that so that we know that you're in the session as well. Would give us an indication to start. Hi, Abhinav. Good evening. Thanks for joining in. Hi, Priya. Aditi and Shiva Yogi, I see that you've raised your hands at the moment. If you could drop in a quick note on the chat, would love to support you before we kick in. Yeah. Nimish, hi. Nimish, so we would just, while we wait for everyone else to join in, on your screen, you'll see a QR code that leads you to menti.com. In case you're not able to scan the QR code, you can open up your browser, type in menti.com and the code that you see on top on the screen here, which is 36454785. I will just let you just log in, be on the platform so that once we are ready to kick in, you're already logged in and good to go. We're just gonna maybe just wait for another minute and then we're good. Hi, Sagar. Good to see you. Good evening. Hi, Priyanka. Really lovely to see familiar names. Thank you for taking out the time. Awesome. Brilliant. Thanks, Pooja. Appreciate it. Amazing. Samita, let me know whenever we're good to start. Yeah.
I think we can begin now that we have about 85 odd people.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you. And hi, everybody. Welcome once again to this month's Founder Framework Masterclass. My name is Mohini, and I'm from the WeWork Labs team. I also have Aniket here from the WeWork Labs team. So we both are really excited for this session, particularly today. I'm really also happy to see new names that have joined in for the first time, names that are familiar, because this is our fifth edition of the Founder Framework Masterclass. So it's really nice. But a quick context for everyone that's joining in for the first time. This is a space we've created exclusively for the WeWork Labs and the NSRCEL community. A space where we go beyond theory, somewhere we work with frameworks that are meant to be applied to your businesses the very next day. And that's how we design these frameworks, by bringing in two different perspectives, joining them together with frameworks that have worked in the past, but also applications to how people are using in daily lives. So we really hope that you continue your journey with this Founder Framework Masterclass with us. A quick intro to us as well. In terms of WeWork Labs and Growth Campus, our role is really simple actually. It's to be the active layer of support for you and businesses like yours that are in the early stages looking to scale up. Today, we have over 300 startups across the country that are building with us. And each month, we bring the community together to learn, to grow, and share with each other. One of the ways is through the Founder Framework Masterclass, where each month we focus on a theme that's come up with conversations with founders like you. So Samantha and I walk back onto the drawing board and we see which expert can we bring in that can help you walk through those problem statements in a very practical and a founder first framework. We also support founders, in just a click of a button to either work from any of the 500 locations at a subsidized cost, access to mentors that can help you brainstorm at any point, and a lot of other benefits that using WeWork as an infrastructure, we aim to provide startups like yours. So that's a little bit about us. But one thing that I really enjoy about these monthly masterclasses is hosting it alongside NSRCEL, who also share the same commitment to strengthening founders and their journeys. So to tell you a little bit about their work, I'd love to invite Samita to take the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Mohini. And I know you're all waiting to get into the crux of the session, so I won't take too long. NSRCEL is a nonprofit startup incubator that is a part of the IM Bangalore fraternity. And we run 14 different programs to help startups learn the 0 to 1 and sometimes the 1 to 10, based on which program you're looking at of building a startup. We incubate about 1,300 to 1,400 startups in a year. And if you're interested, you can always head over to the NSRCEL website and drop us a note, and we can help you figure out what programs are good fit for you. And it's really nice to see some familiar names. Welcome everybody to the session, and let's get started.
Amazing. Thank you, Samita. So again, why this session really? Over the past few months, one question keeps surfacing, and I think every one of us is trying to keep an eye out on what's the new AI innovation that's happening across. But the real question really that we ask ourselves is how do we move from experimenting with AI to actually using it to scale our businesses? We'll also see how the founder community that we have today is really diverse from early stage to growth stage startups. So how do we build systems that are smart, resilient, and help grow alongside us without creating a tech debt that can slow us down later? Right? And that's what today's session is all about. It's about making AI agents and scalable tech infrastructure founder friendly, something that you can walk out with clarity and apply immediately to your businesses as well. So coming into the activity for the day and just sort of getting a quick pulse check on your thoughts about this conversation. Let's make this interactive. So again, if anyone has not joined in, I would request you to quickly scan the QR code and join us on the Mentimeter platform. And let's take a quick look at what comes up together and use that as the backdrop for today's conversation. Yeah. If we are good to start off with it, quick thumbs up. And I know that we are able to join in. Perfect. I see quite a lot of them. Perfect. What I'd really like to start off with is, from your perspective, what's in one word that too? What's your biggest association with AI agents today? And just a quick nudge, whether it's automation, whether it's efficiency, whether some people call it hype, experiments, it is the future. I'd love to understand what you think. Automation, absolutely. Hype, okay, I'm liking that. Efficiency, absolutely. Brilliant. Research, magic, that's quite interesting. Brilliant. That's beautiful. And I think it's a lot. And I think every day we take some time to try and see what's new in this space. And I think it's moving in such a fast speed that it's absolutely impossible to keep. So it is definitely magic. It is definitely the future. But at the crux of it, it should help us be more efficient and bring automations to our daily life. Thank you so much for everyone to participate in this. I'm going to head to the next question. Amazing. Okay, now, what I'd like for you to do here is just to think back and think about how confident do you feel right now in your current tech architecture to support AI adoption? From 0, it's not confident at the moment, but of course, 10 is absolutely confident. And this is purely to just have a reflection moment to see, what are the changes we might need to make to stay relevant in how the world's going to be shaping up tomorrow. Absolutely anonymous, just a self-reflection question for us to think about as a group. Amazing. So we're almost there. I feel the same with you. Brilliant. I'm going to give it maybe another second or so. Okay, perfect. So we're at about the half mark. Soma, I think that's really interesting. And I hope that with this really interesting framework that Soham introduces you today, we're a lot closer to the number 10 and walk that at the end of the masterclass. Brilliant. Let's go to the next one. And I think we do think about this quite a bit. The biggest challenge you face when integrating AI into your product or your service or your business. It could be anything. It could be just in terms of cost. It could be in terms of data. It could be, complexity in how to incorporate it. Okay, perfect. Brilliant. It's absolutely true. Complexity, data, talent, expertise. Whoever said starting confusion, I'm completely with you. I think, like I mentioned, too many things definitely gives you a question mark in terms of how. And I hope that today's session really gives you some answers in terms of how we could actually incorporate it. And I definitely know that will happen at the end of the masterclass because we're actually going to use a live example and actually build an agent alongside Soham as well. So we are going to walk back with a practical example of how should we structure our thoughts, because I think that's really important. And also see how do we track responses and efficiency of the model. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Last question is how would you rate, and this is personal question, of course, but how would you rate your AI readiness today on a scale of 1 to 10? Perfect. I really love the honesty. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, okay. I think that gives us a lot of perspective to sort of get into our next section. Thank you so much for participating. And I'm really excited to bring our expert here today to really talk about all the things that we had through these questions identified. It's really energizing to also see what's on top of the mind for all of you. So now on to today's guest and what we really here waiting for. We're really excited to have Soham with us because Soham's not just a founder, he's truly a builder at heart. He's the founder of the Outpost AI, Trivius, and has been a lead mentor at Google for startups and for WeWork Labs for many, many years. He's worked with countless founders to help them build resilient tech infrastructure, streamline the operations, and deploy AI-driven workflows that actually stick and are showing results. And I think the real reason I think Soham's the right person to lead the room here today is because he doesn't talk about AI, but he, on a daily basis, helps founders to apply it and scale that up further. In today's session, he is going to share frameworks very similar to the business model canvas, but on incorporating it on building agents. He's also going to walk us through live examples so that by the end of this masterclass, and it is a 2-hour masterclass because it is an active hands-on masterclass, you'll walk back with tools and a prototype agent that you could use for your personal use case. So with that, Soham, over to you. Yeah, I'm really excited and thank you so much for taking out the time.
Thank you, Mohini, Samita. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session today. I'm also joined by Kiran from my team. So both of us, work at the Outpost, Trivius, Intelligent Agents, bunch of other activities. So we are really excited to be here and kind of present this session. Again, thanks to Samita, Mohini for having us here. Let's get started. So the idea here is not to just talk about agents, but to actually build one. And so Kiran is also here. He'll actually show you and build an agent right alongside all of you today. Right. So let's get started. A little bit about us. So Kiran and I work at a company called Trivius. We actually have three ventures that we are working on. One is our traditional, services venture where we've done a lot of really interesting stuff, which I'll talk about. But more recently, we're working on two different agent-first initiatives. One is called Intelligent Agents. We've, of course, worked with WeWork Labs, and now we're working with Google for Startups on creating agent-first products and services, right? So we are doing really interesting things there. Also, talk a little bit about the Outpost, which is like an AI news site, which is designed and built by agents, right? So a little bit about Trivius. We've done a lot of like really interesting work, like applied AI, right? More recently into healthcare, we're creating like large AI data sets where we've worked in travel, healthcare, education, almost across the board. And a lot of the knowledge and learnings, right, from that has, you'll see that today in the presentation as well, right? We worked with, different companies like DeepMind, IDEO. We worked with the World Health Organization across almost every vertical, right? And learnings from all of that will be kind of showcased here today, right? One of the interesting products that we are working on recently, and Kiran is like, almost every day into this product. It's called the Outpost. You can check it out at the outpost.ai. It's like a Google News, but for AI. So if you're interested in AI news and how do you keep yourself up to date, right? This is one of the products that we have built for ourselves. So it kind of aggregates all the news out there and kind of showcases, right? What's the latest in the world of AI? Keeps us all up to date. There's also a newsletter, and very soon we are adding video to it. So it's a one-stop consumption for everything from research papers to happening in the world of AI to video very, very soon, right? And the interesting thing is the entire platform is actually powered by agents. So unlike a traditional media company where you have a lot of people involved, we have, of course, some people involved in the review and kind of editorial process, but the entire pipeline is automated by agents. So it's very interesting. It's a very practical application of agents. And if time permits, I'll actually love for Kiran and I to kind of show you, right, what we are doing there. And it's a very complex multi-agent system that works together to showcase the latest news every 2, 3, 4 hours, right? That's one of the interesting things we're doing. Apart from that, of course, we're representing intelligent agents today. We're doing a lot of interesting things, workshops like this. We're trying to get people to understand about what's happening in agents and how they can adopt it. I think the main challenge is in adoption of AI, right? A lot of companies have heard about AI, but agents is something that everybody can adopt, and that's what we're here to talk about. We do a lot of interesting things, but some of our stuff is open source as well. One of our agentic frameworks is called Shiksha Sathi. It's like an education agents that helps K-12 students. This is in Bangalore, around Bangalore, the rural parts of Karnataka. Students there to learn in Kannada, right? And it's like an assistant that these government school students can ask any question to in Kannada, and it will respond to them on their own terms, right? Helping them out, guiding them. And this is a solution. You can go to our website, intelligentpeoples.co. It's a fully open source solution. And we have worked with Google for Education and Google for Developers on this initiative. Very interesting. Again, open source, and which is actually being used in larger parts of Karnataka, rural Karnataka, right? So very interesting. Again, happy to kind of brainstorm with you if you have some solutions. And I've seen some of the responses that you have already provided. So happy to kind of see how you can leverage AI agents as well, right? So to begin with, one of the questions that I'd like to ask everybody is, what are LLMs, right? Anybody in the chat wants to give it a shot? Of course, I have the definition up over here. Any ideas around? Okay, LLMs are large language models. Thanks, Nitin. But beyond that, right? From a practical perspective, what do you think LLMs are? Shalini says these are learning platforms, correct? Right. Any other thoughts, right? How are LLMs created, for example? We have billions or trillions of parameters. They're neural networks. You're all correct. Right? They're chatbots with a lot of information. That is also correct. Right? Processes information, creates frameworks, perfect. Large tracts of text data. Yes, that's absolutely correct. Right? You all are on point, right? So this is the definition. I'll actually move to the next slide, which kind of highlights some parts of this, right? A large language model is basically an AI program, right? And see, when we talk about AI, right, like this is a large, it's a diagram which showcases AI in general. Inside AI, there's a lot of stuff. You think today, because LLMs are very popular and we are looking at Geminis and ChatGPTs of the world, we think that is the epitome of AI, or that's what's possible, right? But I think Samhita, along with like a lot of us, right, at various startup accelerators, incubators, right, we can all tell you that AI was around for a long time, right? So it's not just about LLMs. LLMs are something that have come very recently, but you can see, right, LLMs are a very small part of this big framework that we called artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence are basically intelligent machines. These are broadly defined, right? Inside artificial intelligence, you have this branch called machine learning, right? Just to give you an idea, there are other things beyond machine learning. For example, robotics, right? Very soon you'll see humanoid robots. You have robots across. You already see them, right, in warehouses and different applications. So AI is not just limited to machine learning, as you might have heard, right? So AI is a very vast field. And inside AI, you have machine learning, but something like robotics is outside of this world. Inside machine learning, of course, you have machine learning is all about pattern recognition, right? If you have to get machines to think and kind of learn, you need to you need them to be able to understand patterns, right? So machine learning is all about pattern recognition, learning general patterns from data, right? Inside machine learning is another branch called deep learning, and one kind of deep learning methodology is neural networks, which is around understanding patterns in unstructured data, right? So if you look at the internet, we look at audio, you look at video, we look at even text, right, and books, etc. It's not very structured, and this is something very important to understand because um, if you look at a table, right, like an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, a database, right, it's structured data because you have columns and you have rows, and you understand the meaning of those rows and columns, and therefore it's structured, right? It has some sense to the data itself. Whereas the internet knowledge in general, right, is not structured. So to make sense out of unstructured data like the internet, books, blogs, video, audio, etc., technology like deep learning or neural networks was created, where you're trying to figure out patterns in unstructured data, right? And inside deep learning is another branch of computing called large language models, which is around using neural networks to understand textual data, natural language data, right? And this is what we're talking about today. This very small piece of this entire puzzle, right? So coming back to the definition, large language model, like an AI program, specifically a deep learning algorithm trained on massive data sets. This is, we all have also pointed it out. It's trained on massive amounts of data sets. And why am I telling you all of this? Because agents are essentially using large language models. And when you're using a technology like AI agents, you have to understand how they are created, right? And how they are trained. So you know what they're capable of, right? Are they good at certain things? Are they bad at certain things? You should be aware of its capabilities so you can use them to its fullest extent, right? So they're trained on massive data sets, right? And when time permits, we can show you some of the data sets, mainly Wikipedia, Open Web, etc. And it's designed to understand, generate, and manipulate human language. So large language model, the language stands for human language. And when it's trained on this amount of data, it can do tasks like text generation, translation, answering questions. Okay, so this is essentially a large language model. Okay, of course, details of this are on this blog post. But beyond this, right, I'll give you an example of how large language models work. Now, this might get a little esoteric, right? But it's important to understand how some of this stuff works so you can also leverage this technology, right? So large language models, like other things, right, in deep learning, essentially mostly classification models, right? Essentially, they are good next word predictors. What do you mean by a predictor, right? I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you have a lot of music in the world. Uh, I'll just give you a simple example, so it's not very complex. Assume that I've just simplified it, and there are two kinds of music in the world. There is, let's say, R&B, or let's say classical music, and you have reggaeton songs. So let's say you have a little more live music, let's say pop music, right? In the world, there are two kinds of music: pop music and classical music, just to simplify, right? Whenever you find a new music, right, like a new song, right, you can plot it on a certain graph, right? Over here, we have two parameters. We have energy and tempo, right? And assume for a second that piece of music can be classified based on its energy and its tempo, and it can be put in a graph like this, right? Anything which is like a classical song is like blue and can be plotted like this, and anything which is like a pop song can be plotted like this, right? Of course, in the real world, this is far more complex, right? You just don't have two parameters like energy and tempo. Um, you'll have like thousands of parameters, right? But just simplifying this, assume that you have songs and you can classify them on two parameters and they look something like this. What an ML model essentially tries to do is it tries to classify anything that is not seen before. Maybe you throw a new song in front of the model. It's trying to classify the new song that you throw it in, in front of it. It'll try to classify, is it a classical song or a pop song, right? That's what it's trying to do. How does it do that? Of course, there are various models to model the behavior, right? In this case, it's a very simple example. Songs which are classical have low energy and tempo, and pop music typically has high energy and tempo. I'm just giving an example. So typically, there you can have a simple line between them. It's like the model kind of comes up with that distinction between these two. And so any new thing that comes up, right, and you plot it in terms of energy and tempo, let's say a new observation comes up over here, right? It's below that line, therefore it's a classical song, right? Again, this is a very simple example. In real world, you have multiple parameters, and it's not straight lines like this. But essentially, most of machine learning is around pattern recognition. It's trying to classify, right, whether it's something of type A, type B, and so on, right? And I'll tell you how this helps in the world of large language model. So in large language models, what happens is, let's say you ask a question, right? Sing me a song or tell me a story, right? So if you ask a question like that, what it does is it tries to, just like in the previous example, it's trying to predict what this song is going to be. In that case, it's trying to predict each word one by one, right? That is something which you have to think about, right? So if I ask it, tell me a story, it's trying to predict the first word. Just like in the previous example, it's trying to predict what kind of song it is. And in our example, just two kinds of songs. But in the real world, right, it's trying to predict human language. So there are n number of words, an infinite almost number of words in the English language. It's trying to predict what the first word should be, right? Turns out, based on, and can you tell me, right, like how will it predict which word it should pick first, right, in the chat? In the in the previous example, maybe we trained it a lot of songs, right? And it's then trying to predict that, right? Based on the prompt, Sangam says, right? So let's say I ask it to say, like, tell me a story. How does it predict the first word, right? Weight, subjects. Somebody said looks at similar fingerprints learning collective size, looks at similar stories or similar sentences in a data set. That's correct, right? So it's trying to predict what it's seen and what it's been trained on, right? So typically these models are trained on Wikipedia, a lot of textual data, all kinds of data, right? Whatever data was available to the person who's created the model. So turns out, right, in most stories, right, the is a very common word, and most sentences, most stories actually start with the, right? So what it does is it creates this, like I told you, it's a neural network model. It's trying to predict what is the next word. So we'll come up with all these various words, right? And then it'll assign a probability based on what it's seen in the wild, right? And associates that with a story, right? So the first word could be the, because the is like the most common word out there, right? And then based on the story, based on what you've asked it, it'll try to detect the next word, try to figure out the probabilities. Next word is, in this case, is cat. Maybe you've asked a question, right? Like, tell me a story about cats, right? And in this way, it's trying to predict every single word one at a time, right? So essentially, that is what a large language model is. Um, you have to remember this while you're creating AI agents, because um, it's not really thinking, right? When you're asking a question, there are reasoning models, and we could go into that. But you have to remember and kind of try to understand uh, what is happening there. It's not thinking and coming up uniquely with a story. It's learned something when it was getting trained, and based on that, it's just trying to predict what would be the next word. Okay, it's not reasoning and kind of giving you the answers, right? There are reasoning models out there, but I'll kind of, if time permits, I'll talk about that, right? So it's a simple next word predictor. Okay. Um, Hopefully that gives you an idea of what an LLM is at the very core, right? Of course, it's far more complex, but you'll kind of get an idea of what's happening. And that's why you see, right, every word getting written, right, when you ask a question. Now, we talked a little bit about um, LLMs. I'll talk about agents very soon. But before that, there's a very interesting article by Sequoia Capital last year where they talked about, AI's $600 billion question. Of course, you find the link on the screen itself. But, there's so much investment into AI, and this was last year. Even after that, there's so much investment into infrastructure, into AI itself. So the number is far beyond $600 billion. But the question is, are we living in a bubble? And our companies, our investors, is the entire ecosystem going to get a return on this investment in AI? Right? And you have to remember that investment, just like this section over here, let's say $600 billion was invested into artificial intelligence, and only some of it has gone into LLMs now. A lot of companies have been doing many things in healthcare, machine learning, across the board. So the question is, how do you get the return on the investment? That's what Sequoia Capital was kind of wondering last year, right? And the thought is, right, AI agents is one of the most practical ways for most people to get a return on investment, right? Traditionally, a lot of the machine learning AI technologies was directed mainly towards medical and very specific vertical use cases. But today, AI agents give anybody the ability to kind of create AI's first solutions, and that is how investors now think that they'll get a return, right? People will apply AI, and then, like all of you were talking about efficiency, right? All those gains will happen. And that's how you'll get the return on the investment. With that, let's start a little bit to understand about what are AI agents, right? So an AI agent refers to a system or program that's able to autonomously perform tasks on behalf of a user or another system by designing its workflow and utilizing available tools, right? So I'll just point out some important bits here, right? So it's basically a system or a program, just like AI is like a program essentially. It's capable of autonomously performing tasks on behalf of a user. And that's the important thing, right? Agents can do things without your intervention. And I'll kind of draw the parallels between, what if you could code something and get it to automate stuff, right? Um, so what is the difference between that and an agent? I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But agents are able to autonomously perform tasks on behalf of a user or another system. So it acts like a user or a certain role. It behaves like a certain role, and then it can execute certain tasks by designing its workflow and utilizing certain tools. So um, I've seen a lot of your questions around lead generation, right? So you could have an AI agent that um, works like an outreach agent, right? Where you're trying to generate leads. One agent's task could be somebody who's just doing scouting, who's just figuring out who to reach out to, right? So it assumes a certain role, and it has certain tools, certain workflows to help it accomplish that task. Another AI agent's job could be to, once you've identified who the person it is you should reach out to, how do you actually reach out to them? Via LinkedIn, via email, and it does a job there, right? So this is what an AI agent can do. And the important thing is autonomously, right? There shouldn't be a lot of human intervention involved. Okay. So this is like a visual representation of an agent. Um, so agent is at the center over here. It's typically an instance of a large language model, right? You have to remember agents can adopt a certain role. In the um, in the example of a lead generation agent, you want maybe you want somebody to do scouting. Who are the right users you should reach out to, right? So it's a scouting agent where it performs the role of a scouting person, and then, it has a certain task. Go and find out who are the most relevant leads for a certain category, let's say healthcare. right? What are the important people I should contact with respect to a healthcare and maybe a vertical, right? So that's the task. And to accomplish that task, right, agents typically have memory, right? Um, and we'll kind of show you examples of this as time permits. Typically, if you're talking to a large language model, you will not have any memory, right? Agents have memory, but large language models don't have memory. So, and memory is also short term, which could be around the context of the conversation. And we'll give you examples where, we'll share our name. We'll see if the LLM can actually remember even my name, right? And then there's short-term memory, and then there's long-term memory. Long-term memory is, if you're going to a hospital, right, I'm just giving the example of like a hospital, right? Short-term memory is you could be doing follow-ups, right, and then you're having a conversation. In that conversation, it remembers the stuff. But maybe in long term, you have already come for a couple of appointments, and I want to leverage the past information on your history and your details to make this conversation much richer, right? So you have memory, and agents can do certain tasks. It can do some planning and execution. Also, agents using large language models, right, cannot do a lot of tasks on their own. Okay, that means like we were talking about, right? All this information in large language models are trained on like massive amounts of data set, Wikipedia and so on. That's why when you go to ChatGPT or Gemini, it says, right, my information is up to date till, September, whatever, 2024, right? Why is that agent not able to leverage data beyond that date? Because it's been trained on that amount of data, right? So if it wants to know what's the weather, what's the kind of stuff, right? Do you think it can do it on its own? Shalini says no. Why do you think that's the case, Shalini? Why can't it, we think AI agents are so smart or large language models are so smart, right? Like, yeah, you're correct, right? Like, why can't it even tell me the weather or who's the prime minister of India today, right? Because it has to be trained and fed, right? So, what does that mean? Large language models have been trained, right? So if you ask a question, it will try to use that information, right? And there are cases where LLMs have been trained on a certain amount of data. And whenever you ask, right, who's the president of the USA, it might reply with Joe Biden, right? And it's very politically incorrect answer because today the president of the US is somebody completely different, right? So that's where an agent doesn't rely only on the training data. It can access additional tools like vector search engines, databases, web search, Gmail, Slack, all kinds of information, right? So agents are actually much smarter than traditional large language models. They can be fed specific information, right? If you're creating a lead generation agent, it can be fed information about your business, about your database or use cases, right? So it's not contacting anybody out there or people in its own, data set, right? It's using your data sets, your context, and then it can use external APIs or what we call tools to, to augment its knowledge, right? So that's in essence an agent, right? And just to extend this further, the real world is not as simple, right? It's not just about one agent. Typically, you would have a query and you'd ask a question like, can you help me draft an email? Or you could go to ChatGPT and say, I'm planning a trip to Manali, right? Can you tell me about the good hotels there? Can you tell me about what activities I should do, right? So what happens there is you send the query, it goes to one agent whose just job is to understand the context, right? And break the question into different parts, right? And some parts of it is just understanding what is Manali and what is the question about. Then there might be a retrieval agent who would go to a certain place and do a certain job, right? Even in the case of Manali, it's trying to find out what's the weather in Manali, who are the hotel operators, who are the tour operators. Another agent task might be to find out availability of certain hotels, right? Once you figure out which are the top hotels, based on your budget, it will maybe find availability, right? Based on the dates you've given. In case you've not given this information, maybe this retrieval agent at the beginning would go back to you and ask, right, when are you going there? What's your plan like? And what's your budget? And so on, right? So typically in a real world, right, when you're speaking to ChatGPT, right, you're speaking to one agent and it's then orchestrating. It's the technical term, but it's trying to break the task into multiple agents and each agent has certain thing to do. Okay. So at this point, I'd like to ask you a question, right? When you're speaking to something like ChatGPT, right? are you speaking directly to an LLM or are you speaking to an agent? Right? Is ChatGPT an agent or ChatGPT an LLM? Abba says agent. Okay, Shalini says LLM. Priyanka says LLM, right? Bhargava says LLM. So the answer is ChatGPT as a service, the website that you go to, is an agent. It's not an LLM, right? Can you tell me what the LLM could be? OpenAI is the company, and Ankush is right. GPT-5 is the LLM, right? So you would have heard, right? OpenAI has all these different agents. Sorry, all these different models. GPT-5, 4.0, 4.0 Mini, O3, right? They have all these different models, right? Similarly, right, if you go to AI Studio at Google, you're using Gemini 2.5 Pro, 2.5 Flash, right? Kiran will be showing a couple of demos today with Flash. So the LLM over there is 2.5 Flash, but if you're going to AI Studio or using an assistant, right, on your phone to access Siri or all these other services like Gemini, those are agents, right? So there's a important difference that you have to understand between LLMs and agents. LLMs are the models. When we talked about the diagram before and AI and so on, right? LLM are the models that have been trained on data. They have only one context from the data set that they have been trained. Whereas AI, right, like an AI agent, leverages the LLM, the understanding and the language capabilities of that agent, right? But has no ability to find out what's going on, the latest news, the weather, availability of hotels, nothing like that, right? It will use the natural language ability to do certain tasks, and that task could be done by a large language model, but augmented with information on the web. So when you're talking about a lead generation agent or any of the use cases I've seen today, you'll be using agents as well as LLMs, right? And ChatGPT again is a agent, right? Which uses various LLMs in the background. Sometimes it thinks it uses a different model for thinking, typically. Okay. So, quick thought about the evolution of automation architectures, right? So you might be asking, right? So Vamsi, I get, right? Like so agents can do things automatically or autonomously, but can I use code to do this as well, right? I could write a big statement, right? And you're correct, right? Like I could write an if statement, right? If let's say I'm building a lead generation agent, right? You feed it a lot of information and then based on the kind of person that you are want to hire, right? Or you want to look at, you can say, if this person is of type A, do this, right? If not something else, do something else, right? So that is what we call rule-based playbooks, right? Historically, we've seen a lot of this, right? And they're very close to manual, and we call it automation because you have to be involved. And anytime you change the rules, you really have to work your way through this. So imagine you've seen this a lot, right? Like also call this business process automation, robotic process automation. This is where you might have made a call to, let's say, for a service, right? Let's say you bought a TV or a mobile phone. It's not working. You call a certain provider like Samsung, and they route you, right? If for English press one, for Hindi press two, for TVs press one, right? And you keep pressing those one, two, and so on. What's happening is you're in this massive if-else condition, which is like a rules-based playbook or business process automation, where you're trying to navigate this big statement, and it's routing you to the right person based on certain conditions. The moment you launch a new product line like that tablet, you have to add it. You have to kind of give it that knowledge and that kind of abilities, right? So we've moved from there, and this has been happening forever, right, to predictive ML. Since machine learning was launched, machine learning has been happening forever, but consumer grade machine learning, for example, Google Maps and YouTube and so on, right? For a lot of things like your YouTube homepage, right? They are using something called robotic process automation. So for every person, right, if you see 9 thumbnails on YouTube, it's deciding for you, right, based on certain parameters, what should you be watching, right? So it's machine learning. It's very specific to a certain use case like YouTube and your interests, trying to predict which ones you should do. Right? So this has been something that's been around for a while. And see, predictive ML is something that bigger companies like Google's or Microsoft's, Meta's of the world have been able to do, right? But now what's happening is with generative AI, right, on the right-hand side, it opens up this powerful ability of AI and decision making and prediction to a lot of us, right? Today, you have these things called co-pilots, right? You can have a co-pilot code with you, design with you, help you in certain tasks, do accounting for you, right? And then you have agentic automation, which is happening right now, where you can use agents to not just help you code and do specific tasks, but almost any kind of task, right? It can help you automate certain workflows like lead generation, right? And we are aiming towards general purpose AI, where AI can do pretty much everything. But if you think, right, again, this is just my view. If you see LLMs are smart next word predictors, we're still a little bit away from general purpose AI or super intelligence or general purpose AI. Today we are in agentic automation where you and me can actually use these large language models to do a lot of these automation, which these big companies have been doing, or you would need ML at some point, right? Like even 3 4 years back, for some of these things you would need ML, but today you can use agents to do them, right? So what can an AI agent do? And I'm just talking about a couple of the possibilities because I know a lot of these questions would come out, right? So today you can do outreach, right? Like we're doing lead generation. You want people to be discovered. And then after you discover people, you want to reach out to them with a personalized message, or you want to do support, right? You want to do research, right? Like you have a specific topic in accounting and lead generation and sales and marketing. You have you want to file taxes and you want very specific clause to be researched, right? These agents can do outreach, support, research. They can help you in sales and marketing, right? In-person sales is difficult, but like remote sales, assisting salespeople, assisting marketing, right? Marketing creation of marketing calendar, automation of posts, creation of posts, all of that stuff can be done, right? And of course, apart from this, you can get agents to actually build stuff for you. It could be design, it could be code, it could be whole websites, apps, right? So they can actually do stuff for you as well, right? So these are just some of the possibilities that the agents can do, right? Can essentially, if there's something which you can, which requires some amount of decision making, it's not very creative thinking, I would say, but there's some work to be done, and it's uh, somewhat repetitive, and it doesn't require complex capabilities, like for example, clinical research or diagnosing, right? Like if you ask me, right, from what is ML and what is like a research side and what is agents, right? So look at healthcare. I wouldn't diagnose a patient using agents, right? Although agents have been trained on vast amount of X-rays and medical data, but an agent can help you schedule appointments, help you triage cases, right? But in screening and diagnosis, I would not do it, right? So there are certain things agents can do which are not very creative. It can help you kind of with all these manual tasks, right? Um, right. I'll give you some examples of agents out there. Um there's some specific questions as well. I'll try and come to that later as well. So I'll show you a couple of agents in the real world. I'm sure you have the first agent you would have seen out there, right? Like ChatGPT is the example of the most common agent. It could be ChatGPT, Siri, Gemini's of the world, right? Like when you interact with ChatGPT, you're talking with an agent, right? Similarly, of course, Perplexity is a very complex agent as well, just like ChatGPT. Today, right, you can get Perplexity or ChatGPT or Gemini to do deep research for you. And these research is actually research topics could be very deep, right? You might be investing money, let's say, in the stock market, and you want to understand about the risks for a certain company, and you want to analyze the shareholder reports and kind of give you certain data points and make it very simple for you to understand, right? So you can use Perplexity, Deep Research, Chat GPT as well as Gemini to kind of do this for you. Right? These are examples of real world agents that you can leverage right today, right? Um, Another example is Devin, Lovable, right? A Firebase Studio, Codex, right? A bunch of different agents will help you code today, right? Devin is another really interesting agent where you can speak to it on Slack or chat. In fact, you have no access to an IDE or a development environment, right? Typically, if you see developers pick up a development environment, and that's where you interact with an AI. Over here, you don't interact with this agent on a development environment. It's a chat environment. It's a WhatsApp or Slack. You can give it commands, ask it to do something, and it will come back and give you some results, right? So today, many of these services are available, and you can definitely check these out. Scheduling is another big thing, right? If it's a mundane activity, right? And even at WeWork Labs and bunch of other places, right? Like I think the main challenge is how do you find the time for mentors and for startups, right? And scheduling is always a challenge. And I think we've used Cal.ai even at WeWork Labs. And now Cal.ai has an AI agent which helps you schedule your meetings, right? It could be on a call, right? Somebody calls you, let's say in the case of sales, right? Many times you want somebody to fix an appointment for you, so it could be on like a call, it could be on a Google Calendar, it could be on a Slack message, it could be on WhatsApp, right? It could be an assistant that takes information and basically schedules appointments for you based on your availability, right? That's what Cal AI is trying to do. And so you see this very commonly across the ecosystem today, right? You will see everybody getting these agents in to do some task for you, right? All these traditional companies, even Cal.ai had a very nice offering before, but they add all these AI layers on top to make your life easier, right? There's Dot.ai, which lets you analyze data, right? A lot of us have these products and we have analytics, we have large amounts of data. And what I've seen most companies struggle with, right? I've been a mentor for around 10 years now, and I've seen a lot of companies have a lot of data. They're tracking all kinds of metrics from engagement, retention, how many people are coming in a certain funnel, and they don't know how to analyze that data, right? So all the data you're capturing is not actionable, right? So that's where services like Dot, even Post-Hoc today have AI assistants that help you analyze the data. It's like a little virtual, data analyst that sits on top of your data and kind of makes this data like actionable and gives you insights, right? So these are real world AI agents, right? See, this market is extremely complex. I would love to give more examples. There are examples across verticals. We can talk about it. This is a very interesting graph of what's happening in the market. What are different people doing with agents, right? There are, see at the bottom, right? Again, can't zoom in here, but there are horizontal players, right? Like you have your OpenAIs and Googles of the world that are giving you these solutions that you can integrate, right? It could be Gemini, it could be ChatGPT, could be 11 labs. And in the case of India, you have Sarvam, Navana, right? These are companies that are giving you these solutions that you can integrate irrespective of which kind of vertical you're in. It could be lead generation, could be finance, it could be healthcare, right? So there are lots of providers here. There are data center providers. There are all kinds of people, right? So it's a really big market today when we talk about AI automation, AI agents, right? Now, in the AI automation market map, apart from horizontal players, like this is the really interesting piece, which are the agentic pieces, which are in the center. I'll just zoom into this, and again, we are little short of time. I want to show you a lot of stuff as well, so I'll kind of quickly go through this. So you have, in the agentic sphere, a lot of companies, right? You have the code generation companies. I just talked about Devin and Lovable, etc. But there are tons of companies here. Based on the kind of code that you're generating, what kind of context you are in, right? There are companies that let you do enterprise stuff, right? And all kinds of different code. And of course, this Warp, right? It's like a simple terminal emulator. It's like a command prompt or terminal prompt. It lets you do code generation there. So there are agents almost everywhere today. There are marketing agents, right? Again, these are just a very small amount of agents listed here. There are many, many more, right? I saw this in the questionnaire as well. A lot of you wanted to know how can you use agents in marketing, and some examples are OpenCode, Writer, um, and we just hear about chat GPTs of the world, but there are so many agents as well as LLMs which are particularly suited for marketing and content generation, right? In fact, I would say chat GPT or Gemini is not the best model to use for writing, right? So again, these are just a glimpse, right? I could go on and on about fintech, personal assistance, legal, voice, right? Legal itself is such a big sphere, right? Like there's Legora, there's a bunch of other stuff that are helping you like draft contracts or review contracts, do compliance, do even like climate related compliance. So this like when you talk about vertical agents, a huge opportunity, right? Now I'll just pause here just to see if there are any major questions that I can answer. There are a lot of questions. What we'll do is we'll try and answer this as we are going, right? And maybe answer it while we are doing some of the practical session as well, right? So now, see, there are lots of agents that are out there, right? I could give a lot of examples, but the question is, right, how do you create agents that are relevant to you, right? I'll spend couple of minutes talking about a framework that we have come up with to help you think about this. What we call about this is user centricity for AI agents, right? Identifying use cases and defining agent. So how do you create an agent for your use case, right? So if you remember for startups, right, there's this thing called business model canvas. It's a structured way of thinking about a startup, right? What is the value proposition? What is the problem you're trying to solve, and so on, right? And once you fill up all the data that's out there, you can actually build a business around it. It's very helpful and helps you think in a structured way. What we've done is we've created an agent canvas. The URL over here is tinyurl.com/agent canvas, right? It'll take you to a Google doc that you can clone and kind of get started. It's the same kind of doc, has all the same sections. You can just duplicate it, make a copy, and get started. But so this is an activity that you can do later today and try this out. I'll just explain what this agent canvas is all about, right? So essentially what happens over here is there are 9 different sections, right? And using these sections, you can think about how agents can be applied to your use case, right? So first section is around problem statement, right? And there are questions which are like provocations. It helps you think in a more structured way. So what problem or use case you want to address using an AI agent? What advantage will you have using AI agents? And so this is the first section. Second is around the solution. What is the current solution? How is it done today? What is the new or reimagined solution with AI agents? Third is value proposition. What new user values will be unlocked using AI agents? What existing values will be enhanced? Right? Fourth is around UI, how you would interact with the agent, right? How do your users kind of interact and would you be kind of interacting with the agent at all? Right? Because there are many agents which work in the background and don't even ever interact with people. Then data requirements, right? This is super important because a lot of us think that I'll just create an agent today and it'll be live tomorrow, right? I'll show you an example of this and you have to think about how you would get access to the data. How do you think about consent, right? Or privileges, right? Like things around that. Then ethical considerations. What issues do you have to think about when we're talking about an agent getting access to the data, right? And then how do you think in terms of development and validation of the agent? Okay, you built it. How do you know if it actually works, right? Will you do it yourself? Will you go to market with somebody else, right? How do you go to market, right? That's something super important. How do you deploy it? How do you monitor it? How do you actually know if it's working or not? How much time are you saving actually, right? And what are the success metrics, right? So, these are various sections that you can fill up and actually it'll help you think of this in a more structured way. I'll give you an example uh, on this, right? So let's say we are creating an HR agent, which is around, today in large companies, what happens is an HR person typically spends majority of their time, and this is where the problem statement is. In fact, I can just read it, right? Again, this is also available at tinyurl.com/agent canvas HRO. We're calling this agent superhero or super HRO, HR officer, essentially. I'll tell you the problem statement here. Today, our HR spends approximately 80% of their time, right, in operations related tasks and requests, right? So 80% of the time and 5 minutes per request, right? And we have one HR resource per 100 employees, and they are hardly able to do some, culture, growth, stuff that really matters, maybe recruitment. All their time is spent in this responding to queries like, how do I file my taxes or how do I apply for a leave, right? This is the problem statement. You can say this is the proposed solution. We have employed a few workflow automation tools. Might have heard of Zendesk, a bunch of other tools that you can use, but they require supervision. We propose fully autonomous AI agent superhero that is faster, efficient, and personalized for everyday HR needs, right? So this is the proposed solution. And then you can talk about the value proposition, right? Like, see, things like the employee handbook, HR guidelines, policy documents are boring, complex. Nobody wants to read them, right? But how can you reimagine a world where they are easy to consume, personalized, right? So if I have a question around, what is harassment, right? It can actually give me the right answer, right? Or leaves, right? Every department have different policies for leaves. or different guidelines, right? So how can it give me relevant answers, right? And near real-time answers increases both adoption and compliance. So you can give the value proposition there. And then user interaction, right? Like you can say, right, in this case, it could be a WhatsApp, uh, form. It could be an intuitive chat interface. Um, it could be like a Slack interface. Maybe you have a Microsoft Teams account, right, which you're using across the domain. Or it could be a phone call, right? So based on your context, you can say how will the users access the agent, right? And you can say we are not supporting multilingual interaction or voice interaction today. Just chat for now. Maybe in the future we can, right? So again, it helps you think, right, what you're doing or not doing, right now. And then data requirements, right? Of course, we need access to documents, right? HR guidelines, policy handbooks, right? If you're doing, let's say, education, right? Like you're doing Shiksha Sathi, it's an open source agent out there. At some point, we were considering open source books, right, and knowledge. But again, getting access or approvals even for open source, right? It's a government, books which are there in the open source domain. Still, there is some amount of approvals required to get access to the data, right? So how do you do that, right? Once you write it down, right, you need this access to this data. It'll help you think in the right way, right? And then sometimes, right, apart from those guidelines, you need actual access to user information like data from IT, payroll, benefits, HRMS, right? So it's very sensitive PII data, personally identifiable information. And you have to be really mindful about who has access to the data, how will I get access to it, how do I get consent from the user to access the data from on behalf of the user, right? Because they might go to a payroll tool and access all the data on their own. That's okay. That's designed in that way. All the permissions are put up in that way that it can be done. But how do you give this privilege to an agent, right? How does it act on behalf of you, right? And not something higher than you, right? Should access data on behalf of you, right? So this is again very, very tricky. And once you write down, you will understand the complications, right? So ethical considerations, right? Like user consent. How do you do that, right? What is the privacy policy? How long are you keeping access to the data? How do you ensure that the agent accesses your payroll information? It's not shared with anybody else, right? And these are very, very tricky things, right? One mistake, and you're thinking, I'm trying to save time and I can do whatever with agents, but one wrong information shared by the agent to the wrong person can mean like world of difference, right? Instead of your payroll data, just imagine it's got somebody else's payroll data and shared, right? Imagine the repercussions of all those things, right? Biases, fairness, all these things you have to think about. And biases are super important because most of the times you're using these models and they're trained on Western data sets, right? And we've been working a lot in healthcare, and you'd be surprised, right? Like if you ask, Chat GPTs and Geminis of the world on Indian diseases or Indian conditions, and they are absolutely not trained on Indian data. They have tried to get some Indian data for representation. It's not there, right? So if you're thinking about healthcare or fintech use cases, and thinking about Chat GPT, right? And you have to be careful, right? Because it is inherently not trained on Indian data, right? So just think of what will happen. What if you make a mistake and disclose data incorrectly? What is the mitigation plan? What is the corrective action you will do? Right? So tons of things to think about. Again, probably beyond the scope of this presentation, it's important to think about, right? Finally, three things: development and validation, right? Um, Today, Kiran will show you some of the no-code tools that you can use to create agents. But sometimes there are very fancy code tools as well, like frameworks as well, right? There's no right or wrong, right? At Trivia's Intelligent Agents Outpost, we are using both different use cases. What is the approach you should take, right? And you'd be surprised. There's no one size fits all kind of solution, right? We have a lot of developers, right? Kiran was also a developer, but many times, right? Kiran, Farman, our entire team prefer no code, even though we know coding, because it's just faster to prototype and faster to build out stuff. It's more visual. So for many workflows, we actually prefer no code, right? And sometimes you want to build in-house. Sometimes you want to have a partner like us. Sometimes it's single agent. It's a simple use case. You can just use one agent, it'll work, right? Sometimes there are more complex use cases. So what is the performance? So there are a lot of questions you have to answer when you're building these agents, right? Similarly for deployment monitoring, right? Like how do you monitor your agents, right? What are people asking? Are they asking some kind of tricky questions? How are you handling it? right? And you see this very common, right? Like that today there are agents in real estate, healthcare, that are doing phone calls, and you don't want to ask any kind of question. Like if it's a real estate agent calling you, and you can ask a question like, who's the prime minister of India, right? So unless you deploy, monitor, and put strict guardrails, right, that agent will by default answer those questions, right? Maybe give the wrong answer, and maybe land you in trouble, right? So all these things are things you have to keep in mind. And finally, success metrics, right? See, again, if you're building an agent, one of the things that initially you are all pointing out, one of the concerns you have is around cost, right? So agents are inherently designed to make you more efficient, save time, etc. But you're correct, right? There's a cost to build it. So when you're putting a use case or creating a plan around agents, how are you considering the return on investment, right? If you're building this HRO agent, how much time are you seeing for each human resource person? What can they do? How can you quantify in terms of money or any kind of metrics that will make sense to your stakeholders, investors, whatever you're thinking about, right? From an organization perspective, ROI perspective, right? Could be CSAT, HR satisfaction, adoption, whatever. Could be in terms of, if you're doing outreach, right? How many people you've done outreach, how much money you've saved, right? How many leads you have generated, how much business you've generated, etc. Right? So this is like, again, a canvas that you can use, right? These are again two links. One is the canvas itself, which you can clone and kind of build yourself, and one is filled up agent, right? Just to show you what are the directions that you can take there, right? At this point, I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions. A lot of questions out there. Um, yes. Thank you, Mohini. Yes, so you can make a just copy of all of this. I also have one slide just with links. I'll be sharing a lot of links today. So there's a slide just for all the links, and of course the presentation will also be shared with you, right? So definitely clone this, try it out, and then let us know what kind of agents you build. And again, we're happy to guide, right? Next, I'll quickly move into the practical part of this, right? Like, so if you want to build an agent, right? We talked about LLMs, we talked about all this. The groundwork that you should lay in terms of the agent canvas, right? Once you've decided how to approach this agent, how can you prototype and create an agent? That's what Kiran and I will show you very soon, right? There are two primary ways of doing this. One is no code, right? No code, the tool that we'll show you today is called N8N. Okay, you can see the website over here, and I put the link in the bottom as well. This is an open source platform. It was actually not designed specifically for agents. It's like a workflow automation tool, but it's gained in popularity in the last 2 years. It's absolutely exploded, and it's like a very popular tool right now. It's very fast to prototype. It's great for non-developers, right? Like for most people. It's actually good for most use cases. There are companies running hundreds of millions of dollars worth of workflows in anytime, right? It's an absolutely massive tool, right? A lot of our production workflows are running on N8N, right? And there are many other tools, right? I don't want you to leave today thinking only N8N is there. It's come with a bunch of other tools, right? Google has their own thing, ChatGPT has their agent builder. Amazon has one, right? So everybody has their own way of doing this. Even Sarvam has their own kind of agent builder, right? But I'm showing you N8N today because N8N is open source. You can use their cloud instance. We're showing that cloud instance today, so you can get started really quickly. But since it's open source, you can download the code, you can install it on your laptop, you can install it on your server, right? We're doing a bunch of healthcare workflows for AIMS New Delhi, where it has to be on their servers. So it's very, very easy for us to set it up on their servers and kind of get that data workflows very, very secure, right? So this is one of the things we'll show today. But it's very fast to prototype. Personally, even though I have been a developer all my life, I actually prefer N8N. It's super fast to prototype and build, right? Now, also there are options around code, right? So sometimes you will need to use code. When you have a larger team, you have a lot of developers, right? And you want more control, and there is a lot more frequency to what you're doing, right? For large production workflows. I could talk about food delivery, e-commerce, etc. Where I know that they are using a lot of code-related agentic platforms. Now, even for us, right, we're doing very large workflows, but we're not hitting those workflows every second, right? So if you're hitting, doing a lot of workflows which are, you're do let's say 1,000 invocations of certain workflows every second, right? For large production workflows like that, I would recommend going to something like Code. Whereas for other stuff, which is, you're hitting something every minute, every 10 minutes, every hour, every couple of hours, multiple times you're hitting it every couple of hours. Those are absolutely fine for any 10. And all our production, a majority, I would say, of our production workflows are on no code actually. Right? So even in the code, again, lots of example, LangChain, Google's platforms, everybody has their own platform at this point, right? And again, you can use any one of those platforms as well, right? Apart from this, so what we show you today is one of our, I give you the context and I'll hand it over to Kiran to kind of explain what we're doing over here. This is one of the workshops we did at AIMS New Delhi, and this is an easy enough workflow for everybody to understand. Right. So this is the boardroom of AIMS New Delhi. It's like one of India's premier, medical institutes and so on. And you can see 100 plus doctors who have attended this event, and we have a blog post around this. But you can see some of the workflows that these doctors are able to create in 2 or 3 hours, right? And see, if you are founders, if you are entrepreneurs in some ways, right, at least we're familiar with a lot of technology out there, right? But just imagine these are doctors at AIMS and they have day OPDs and stuff. And they are, they know about technology and chat GPT, but they're not familiar with a lot of these tools. They are able to create some of these workflows in 2 to 3 hours, right? So this is where a lot of the democratization of AI will happen, right? And so we'll actually show you this workflow. It's very easy to understand, right? And just to show you what we'll do is we will create a doctor's assistant, right, in the next couple of minutes using N8N, right? We'll show you what to do after Kiran finishes. So I'll show you all the links as well. We have all the links set up over here. You can try this up and kind of clone this just to see how things work. And it's very simple and straightforward, right? What will let us do is, in this case, in the doctor's assistant's case, it's like a doctor's assistant where it can help you triage cases. So what happens is, let's say there are 2 sheets over here. One sheet is around fake doctors and one sheet is around fake patients, right? Let me actually show you that data. Um, Let me actually show you the data and you'll understand, right, like what I'm talking about. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just showing some of this. Yes. Okay, so these are 2 sheets, right? So there are, see, agents are only relevant when you connect your own data source, right? Say tons of agents out there like ChatGPT and so on, but today we're not talking about it. We're talking about how do you create an agent on your own, right? So that will only happen when you connect your own data. So there are 2 sheets over here. One is called fake patient. One is called fake doctor. You can clone this and try this out yourself. The fake patient, again, is all AI generated data. It has a patient ID. It has a name, age, gender, date of visit, and some parameters, right? Presenting complaint, doctor's observation, diagnosis, recommendation, right? Assume that, in a real world, right, somebody would have come to a doctor, they would have some complaint, the doctor would have some observation, some diagnosis would have happened, and some recommendation, right? All of this is AI generated. And we have generated about 50 records over here, 50 or 51, right? And so what we'll see today is how you can access all this information. And then we have put a couple of doctors over here, right? With our email ID, names, phone numbers, etc. And how you can create an agent in a couple of minutes to access all this information, right? So I'll share all these links. First, you can just follow along and see what's happening, right? Kiran, so do you want to kind of share your screen and take people along?
Sure.
While you're setting that up, I'll just see if I can answer any recent question. If there are any student names, will it be confidential? See, today in the kind of workshop or code lab or kind of session that we're showing today, right? Like what this is just a demo thing, right? Like where we are connecting Google Sheets and kind of showing you how it works. Kiran, can you show it from scratch so that you can kind of just add things and you can see, right? And maybe even show how to sign up on the website, right? Or if you've set that up, right? So that people can understand which website to go to, how, all those things as well. It comes to that. So fingerprints learning collective asks, right? Student names will be confidential. Yes. So today we're just showing you a POC of sorts. In the real world, right? Yes, first fill up the canvas, understand how you'll access all that data, right? And sometimes, right, like see, you're passing these names, etc., to the agent. And in the real world, right, this data is actually going to the data center of the LLM, right? So we're talking about Google's Gemini's of the world, ChatGPT. So data is actually leaving India and going to the data center, right? So you have to see, right, if it's PI, how you handling it, right? Ideally, you should not be sharing all of that. You can do it in a POC like this, but these are exactly why you should think about it and kind of do that. And you can connect to OneDrive and everything else. Yes, Kiran, please go ahead.
So, hi everyone. I hope all of you can hear me. So, I think you guys are excited. We've heard about AI agents, and so now it's time that we actually dive in and build on ourselves. So, I hope you can see my screen. So, we've built an agent here, right? So, first, what we'll do is just talk about this platform that we're using. Someone's already talked about it. I will just talk about it, and then we'll see the demo live once, and we'll take a step back and then build it ourselves from scratch. So I'll also encourage all of you, like now that we'll also share you the sheets, etc. You can also try and build along with me, right? And yeah, just checking the chat once. Yeah. So first, I think we just start with the platform that we use in the framework that we use in it. So we also had a chat question where like people asking is N8N. Yeah, in fact, we're using N8N here. You might have already seen it. N8N is a platform for this knockout. It's almost talked about it. There's a question in the chat. Is N8N for non-technical people or is it also for technical people? Right? First, a bit of a background, right? So N8N was originally was a legacy workflow automation tool, just like Sapio, Make, etc. Even right now they are, but they're sort of captured, I would say, compared to the other players, most of the market when with the advent of this agentic AI, LLMs, etc. Right? So we just sort of using N8N because they're really good. Also, it's open source and so. And to the question like is it for non-technical people only? No, it's actually really good. It's useful even for technical people if they want to do a quick prototyping. They want to just sort of see the result. And if speed is what I'm looking at, definitely uh, N8N is a way to go, right? You will have a lot of in there, right? It's a limited flexibility to some extent, but if speed is your priority for technical, non-technical persons, doesn't matter. Go ahead and use any knockout platform. N8N is a really good option there. It gives you this, visual kind of an interface, right? Sort of like Legos. You can pick and drop, right? It's very easy and intuitive. All you have to probably know is just the basics of LLM, right? Agents, what agent means, and that we have covered already. And yeah, quickly about code frameworks. Code probably will give you more granularity, freedom, and so. Again, right? So for the sake of the demo, we'll just stick with N8N here. First, someone has already given us the background of the data that we have. So I'll not go into that. Let me just open the chat here. I'm going to open this chat. Okay. So the first question that I'll ask is, so they said, let me just look at the patients. Just take one of those names that is Sina Kumar. I'll just take a name. Let's see. Can you say the patient? Sorry. Uh, Presentation. I'll just ask for presentation complaints and also bad. Let's see. So actually engaging with N8N. So now that I'm using N8N, they give you this sort of a UI out of the box. So yeah, here's a diagnosis. So this is diagnosis of speckled mucous plaquettes. And here's a complaint for the same, right? Let me also ask them, like, can you mail this inside? Uh, Doctor. So these are all fake doctors, and interestingly, we have created all of these steps using an LLM to see what the data. Let's see. Hopefully, it sends. Yeah. So the mail has been sent to me. So let me just check if I've actually received the mail. Right. So it's a mail on Meena Kumari. So I'll just yeah. So this has been sent. Now let me just okay. Let's ask if there's any other patient in the list who has the same disease. Just do we have you can sort of see some kind of use case here, right? Instead of sort of looking at this node at ourselves, this agent is able to help us in this regard. I can see there's another patient with the patient ID, right? The 70-year-old. He has the same uh, diagnosis. He's speckled. Okay, let's just check if this is the case. Down here, yeah, see another person here. It's Balaji here. All right, that works. Yeah. So I think that's the demo part here. So we can still see the use case here, right? It's time now. We'll just sort of build it ourselves from scratch. Okay. So the first thing is let me open another tab here. So we have something from scratch. We'll go and we'll just build a completely new workflow here. So first, this is as far as NITN goes, it's terminology. It's a workflow automation platform. So we're actually building a workflow. Okay. So for a workflow to get triggered, there's a trigger point, right? So you can tap on this and you can see this. I'm sorry. There's a trigger manually option. Let's just search for all the triggers here. You can see we've got a lot of triggers. This is depends on the platform that we use, the framework that we use. With NITN, we get all of these triggers. Let's go ahead and use chat trigger. We're going to use chat trigger here. And what we are essentially trying to do with this workflow from creating it from scratch, we'll just understand the basic idea of an agent. We've looked at agent and LLM. So we'll just sort of enforce a theory that we've learned so far. And we'll look at some of the primary concepts like memory tools and so on. So first, this is not about a agent. This is about NITN, which gives us this chat option here. So let's open
And
it.
just to add to what Kiran is saying, right? Like, see, chat option is great, but sometimes, right, like agents might work on a kind of different kind of a trigger. It might work every hour, right? So if you're doing, let's say, scouting or lead generation, right?
Right.
You want it to work every hour, wake up and do certain things and then perform certain actions, right? That is something you can do as well. So he's just showing you the chat, which is the most kind of natural one. Go ahead, Kiran.
Right. So all of us sort of used to engaging with ChatGPT, except it's a SAR interface. Again, like I've shown you all these triggers. So we've got schedule trigger, we've got email trigger. Like when you get an email message, I want my agent to sort of look at the mail and see, okay, this is about certain things and proactively engage in it. So we've got all of these
Kiran,
triggers.
can you just zoom in a little bit? Like maybe increase the size of the window, just Command plus, so that yeah, they can see. No, even if you can zoom, just yeah, perfect. Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get started here. So we'll just sort of start with basics. So I have a chat thing. Let me open the chat here. Clear things out. Yeah. So what happens is this is an interface to sort of trigger this. You have a chat UI here interface. You type something, the workflow gets triggered. So we've just created a basic workflow, but we've created a trigger. Trigger is the essential thing for any workflow. It can be any kind of trigger. Now we have to use the start interface to trigger it. Now let's go ahead and make it create an agent here. All you have to do is just tap on this. Look for agent. And we've got a agent. Now we have the agent here. So what we have done, if you see this is I have one node here, I have another node here, and they are connected sequentially. So n-item is a workflow. It is generally a sequential workflow. You can add certain nodes to make it parallel, but across the thing, you'll see this is a sequential workflow here. Now we added an agent here. And if you see, we've got the option of adding a chat model, memory, and tool. And like to sort of revise what we have learned, agent is when an LLM has some intent. It's very basic. So without an LLM, there's no agent. So this is mandatory over here. Let me just double tap here and open it. And if you see, this is option to add chat model over here. And this another option. This is connected to chat trigger node. And you can see this is a user message over here. So first, let's see the other option you have. User message is a message that goes to this LLM. And that right now comes from the chat. Whatever message you give, it becomes a user message over here. Let me add a chat model here. So in this case, we'll just use Gemini. You can use any LLM that you like. Can be OpenAI model, Google Smart. So for people who are following along, if you want to get an API key for this, all you have to do is you have to go to AI Studio, and there's an option get API key. You'll be able to create your own API key. It's free. So if you're following along, please do check this out and generate your own API key. So once you open this one, there's an option to create new credentials. Just copy the API key over here, and you should be good to go. If you already have an API key from OpenAI or Claude, feel free to use their own chat model over here. So essentially, an agent has an LLM as its heart, because agent is an LLM with some intent, right? We haven't added any intent yet, but yeah, so we've added an LLM, and this is very valid. And memory, tool, etc. are optional. Right. So please do check this out if you're following along. And let's try again. Hello, how are you? Cool. So we've got a message right now. Right? The workflow by itself is complete right now. Can we call this an agent? Let's say this is still not an agent because we haven't added any capability to agent. So what we have done is we've said, okay, this is this model. And if you see this one, what happens, I just put a text. That text became an input here.
Just a note, Kiran. Let us not follow along right now. Let us watch, right? And then after this, you can probably follow along, right? Like you can ask us any questions at the end, just so that we can see what's happening. And Kiran, also talk about how you added Gemini and what they need to do, right, for a key and stuff like that. Please explain that as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we've got this agent, right? So an agent is an LLM with intent. The very basic way you can add an intent is to say, okay, define some persona or nature to that agent, which becomes a simplest thing. Before we jump into that, we actually sort of connected an LLM model here. And this is a Gemini model, right? Let's say we can add any chat model. All you have to do is just tap this plus and see all the options you have. Right? It depends on you which model you want to use. And there are models from Claude. Let's say they're pretty good at coding, right? Certain models from OpenAI, they're good with reasoning, etc. Right? Just pick your own model. If you open, let's say, if I go ahead and pick Anthropic over here, I'll have to sort of give the credential there. It depends on the credential that you have. Right now, for the demo, I'm actually going with Google's Gemini chat model. So I've added the credentials here. All you have to do is add your API key. For you to get an API key of Gemini's, just head on to AI Studio. There's an option get API key, and you should be able to get your own API key. Let's get back here. So now that we are back, we can see I put a message, I'm getting a response here.
So I'll just quickly also just add to this, right? So can you zoom into the part, central part, Kiran? It's a little bit more, so that's just clearer, right? So what's happening over here, right? Like, see, it's like a workflow builder, like you're like thinking of different Lego blocks. So the first block that we built is the chat messaging block, right? This is how we'll say that, this conversation is initiated when this chat block is hit. Then we are adding another block, which is an AI agent block, right? So this is how we add an AI agent to this, right? An AI agent, if you remember my diagram, right, it had certain capabilities, right? One is the LLM, which is attached to it. Then you remember on the left-hand side, I had talked about memory, right? It had short-term, long-term memory, right? Uh, that is something you see, right? So first is the chat model, second is the memory, and third is the tool, right? Tools are, I told you, right? Like AI agents don't have any capabilities by themselves, right? Because they are connected to an LLM. So if you can send a message over here right now, Kiran, like um, you can say, right? My name is Kiran. That's it.
Let's go.
Yeah, you can say, hi, my name is Kiran, right? So when Kiran is entering this message, you can see how it works, right? First, it went to the left node, right? Then it went to the agent node. So it's a workflow builder. It's going step by step, right? So it went to the middle one, right? Like the AI agent. Then it went to the model, right? And then the model, the Gemini chat model actually responded and said, hi Kiran, it's nice to meet you, right? Because we send the context, which is, hi, my name is Kiran, right? Now, because we don't have any memory over here, if we ask the question, like I want everybody to ask in the chat, right? If I say, what is my name? Don't fill it up right now, Kiran. But if we ask, right, what is my name? What do you think it will say? Right? Can everybody put in the chat? What will the response it will be? Right? If I say, what is my name? Right? Okay, Ritu thinks it is say Kiran, right? Savita thinks it will not respond, right? So let's try that out. Kiran, you can say, right, what is my name? Varsha is on the right answer, actually. So you can, Kiran, you can ask, what is my name? Right? Okay, so you can see, right, as an AI, I don't have access to personal information, right? Because, and Varsha is right, because it didn't have a memory, right? Now we're interacting directly with the LLM. We are starting to build an agent, but it doesn't have that memory, right? So it doesn't have that memory. So even if you talk to it like one statement before, it just doesn't have a memory to recollect, right? So Kiran, next, if you could just add a memory to it, right? So this is something you guys can do later, right? You click on that plus, right? Right? And add a, see, there are many options for memory, right? I'll just explain this. So see, there is simple memory and there's complex memory, right? Now, again, I don't want to go into the weeds here, but for most cases, right, simple memory is enough. Simple memory, what happens is if you're talking to an agent and it has some conversation going on, simple memory is enough to kind of store it. Now, sometimes you'll have a lot of complex stuff to kind of recollect and all. You have options of all those complex memories as well. So in this case, let's just select. So what happens when you click on plus, the right sidebar kind of comes and you can select options, right? So click on simple memory over here, right? And what happens over here? It opens up a new window. You have to click on the top left over here, back to canvas, right? The UI is not great, but it will kind of add that. So Kiran, could you just bring that a little bit up? Yeah, the moment part, right? So also when we added the Gemini chat model, right, you can add any kind of model, right? Kiran, can you just delete that model and add that one a little bit as well, right? Like when you click on this, right? So you can see, right, all the models are available, right? Now, you sometimes models you can get them directly from Google or ChatGPT, etc. Right? So you will need an API key so that it knows who's actually paying for that, right? So in case you have ChatGPT, you have to go to ChatGPT's something called API console. We give you an API key, right over here. Then if Gemini, you have to go to AI Studio Google.com again. What you can do is based on the model that you're selecting, we'll tell you how to get something called API key, right? Then NATL will know how to get access to that model, right? That wiring between, let's say, Gemini or ChatGPT and NATL is already there, but you have to configure this API key, right? So just now you can add Gemini, Kiran, right? just add the Gemini one. Okay, now wait over here. So once you connect Gemini, right, to the API key, so there's a credential. You have to set up that API key. Once you do that, you can select any of the LLM over there, right? So you can see all the LLM models are there, right? So you have to select which model is the right for you, right? And like Nikhil was asking, right? See, there are many models which are general purpose. Some are expensive, some are cheap, some are good for financial data, some are good for healthcare, some are open source. So there are tons of models to choose for, right? In this demo, we'll just select Gemini 2.5 Flash, and Kiran, if you can click the top left, like back to canvas, right? So once you select it, it'll come like this, right? So this agent, now AI agent, has a Gemini 2.5 Flash model, which is like a decent model, which has decent abilities, and it has it's not very expensive, right? If time permits, I'll show you, right, what is the pricing, etc., what models are good for what. But now there are two things. It has a model and a memory. Right now, Kiran, if you can clear the conversation, there's a button over there to clear conversation, right? So you don't have to, go outside and do a lot of things. You can quickly prototype, right? You can ask. Now, Kiran, you can say, hi, my name is, or Kiran, whatever. Right? Okay. Right. Like now, Kiran, you can ask, right? What is my name? Right. Now you can see, right? It's giving the right answer, right? What is happening is, right? Every time, let's say Kiran is asking a question, right? First time it asks a question, and Kiran answered with like, this is my name or something. That information, right? See, how are you going to pass to the large language model, right? Large language model doesn't have any context, right? All you can do is there's something called a prompt, right? So what we're doing is when we are actually asking a question, what is my name? We are passing all the previous conversations as a we're passing it in the prompt itself. That is what simple memory is trying to do. Can you show that, Kiran? Like, what is the simple, what is happening, right? Like, yeah.
So if you see here, so you've got this context window length, right? What this actually means, it'll actually add the last 5 conversations of your thing to the prompt itself. Just if you see the input, this is so basically to an LLM, right? There goes a context, which let's call an input, and you get an output, right? So when you add this symbol memory and you set this as 5, it is going to have the last 5 conversations. In our case, there's only 2. So when you ask the second question, what is my name? The actual context of the input that goes to this LLM is all your conversations so far. So if you see, it goes, what is my response? Also, the response from AI. You can see this is human and this is AI. Everything put together goes as a second thing. Thus, LLM right now knows, okay, your name is Kiran, because it also has access to your first question, first statement rather. Hi, my name is Kiran. And this
So
is
this
also
is
something that we call a short time memory.
Yeah, and this is super important because see what happens in ChatGPT, right? Let's say you open a new tab and or a new conversation and you have that conversation, right? After you have like let's say 4 or 5 messages with the LLM, how does it still recall all of that? Because every time you are asking a new question in that same conversation, it's we're asking that question, but you're sending all the previous messages in that conversations back to the large language model, right? So you might have noticed this, right? As your messages become larger and larger, it becomes slower and less accurate. You would have seen this, right, across the board. Why does this happen? Because now you know, right? Like every time you're sending a message to ChatGPT or Gemini, right, you're sending all the messages before, right? And then it can understand what is happening. How does it know your name is Kiran, right? Because right? So you can kind of get the context, right? Like in all in the conversation itself, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Any
So
yeah. So I think this is good, right? Next, see, this is the two things we have added. We have added a model and a memory, right? And next what we'll do is add tools, right? See, just by adding a memory and a model, this agent is not relevant to you yet, right? This agent is a general purpose agent, right? But now we're going to make it relevant to our use case, which is the doctor's use case, right? So we're going to do that by passing relevant information. And to do that, if you remember my example as well, we're going to use tools. So Kiran, can you add the Google Sheet tools right now? Okay, so just before you do that, can you just go back, Kiran? And, can you just go back? Yeah, click on plus. Okay, so you can see, right? These are all the various tools that are available, right? So there were questions around APIs, right? So, and I was giving example of weather, right? Like LLM will not know about weather. So this is how to give LLM context to your outside world, right? It could be your specific documents, it could be your specific databases, it could be an API, it could be some document, anything that you give access to. Again, we'll not have time to cover all these things, right? In code, if you're doing it, you would have to set it up manually. But because it's an intent, it gives you all the tools that are available, right? So he will now search for sheets, right? So you can see now he's adding the Google Sheets tool. You can just click on that here. Okay. So now what is happening is we have our Google Sheets account again integrated. It's just a simple Google sign in, right? That you can do it. Once you do it, right, it'll be connected to your account, and then you can add the document and sheets below, right? So you can just add the document, right? So this has access to all of Kiran's documents, right? Over here, let's say fake doctor, right, or fake patient. Let's say fake doctor. This is the first sheet we're doing. Now, inside the sheet, inside the document, which is fake doctor, there are different sheets. We'll say add sheet one, right? Very simple, right? You can see now what we're going to do is we have added one sheet, which is now available to the LLM, right? And then we'll go back to Canvas or yeah.
So we'll just probably name it first. So
Yeah.
let's say this is fake doctor.
See, this is something which is new. There'll be new elements. It's a different UI as well, right? So it will take you some time to get used to it, but we're just showing you what are the fundamentals.
Okay.
Now, if you can, now this is also important, right? You also have to describe what this is, right? So then only the agent can decide, right? What is this sheet for, right? Although name is there, right? And you have to tell, right, what this sheet is all about, right? That's what Kiran is trying to do, right? He'll say,
Let's say it has all the doctor's contact, email, phone number, etc.
right?
So this
So,
is
it has certain columns in the sheet, but what Kiran is trying to do is describe in words. So the agent can understand when to use this document versus others. And again, see, when you build your agents, you have to add your own databases and all. We're showing a very simple example. Okay, go ahead, Kiran. Okay, you can go back to Canvas, I guess. Okay, so this now has access to a fake doctor's Google Sheet. Can you, yeah, you can maybe ask, right, who was the doctor or something. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, you can see how it works. It actually went, right? And it gives the name of doctors, right? Now, again, it worked, but remember, right, we have not actually told that this agent what role it's trying to do, right? We have not told it who is it supposed to be, right? So,
right.
Kiran, can you go to the AI agent? Yeah.
Right.
So what you can do is you can double click on it, right? And then see, this is the UI, right? The UI is a little strange and it'll take you sometimes to get used to it. Now, to explain to the agent what it's supposed to do, you have to go to options over here, and then there's something system message. Okay. The system message by default is you are a helpful assistant, even if you go to Chat GPT, etc. Every agent, Chat GPT, Gemini, everybody, Siri, right? They have a system message, and it's designed to tell what it's supposed to do and not supposed to do. Who is it supposed to be, right? So now Kiran will change this to kind of give it an idea. It's a doctor's assistant, right? We have this copy pasted message, but you are an AI agent who's responsible for helping the doctors prioritize their work, right? And so on and so forth, right? See, in a real world workflow, right, there will be different agents which will do different things. One agent will do something, hand over the work to another agent. It's a really complex, uh, you know, uh, like complex workflows. What we're trying to show you is how to build a very simple one use case agent, right? So we've told now we are using the LLM and we've told it that you're an AI agent who's responsible for doing something, you're helping the doctor, right? Yes.
I think now
Okay.
that we saved it.
Yes. Okay. So now, so we have given some information, some kind of guidance to the uh, agent. Now let's go back, right? So Kiran, can you just clear the chat and just ask, right? Who are you? Or hi or something. Hi, who are you? Whatever, right? So you can see, right? It changes how it kind of behaves and kind of comes back to me, right? And you can see, right? Like you can see what is happening. The system, just like, if I have a conversation and what I have talked before and what the AI has responded, etc., all of that stuff goes back in every message. Similar way, right? The system message is also kind of same, right? Every time you are asking a question. Okay. Now, Kiran, can you add the other sheet as well? Right? And again, we are giving the example of Google Sheets. Why? Because it's super easy to show us, right? We have less time to show you, right? Like how all of this will work. In the real world, you can connect a database, right? You can connect all these other things as well. What we're doing over here is we're adding a fake patient, the same Google Sheet I've shared in chat. From that inside that, there's a sheet called fake patient. And we're going to give a description to it as well. And we're going to rename it. Right? In the real world, you can connect databases and see your databases can have tens or thousands or millions of rows of entry. You have to explain, right? Like we are not kind of detailing that step out right now. This again, there are a lot more complex things that you can do. You can explain to the agent how you can recover or get certain rows from a million rows or 10 million or billion rows. You have a billion rows, you want to just get 5 rows to send it to the agent, right? That will be, for example, you're doing e-commerce agent or lead generation agent. There'll be a lot of people or items in the database, you want to retrieve only a few. So that logic also is possible again beyond the scope of the call today, but happy to kind of detail it out, right? So read all the patient database. So he's kind of explained, right? What are the columns over there, right? Ideally, if you can give the column names, explain, right? What is that column used for, right? The agent will be able to do its job better, right? Again, this is very simplistic, but again, I'm just like, can you go back to Canvas now? Yeah. Right? So now we've added 2 sheets, right? And now essentially we can ask questions about patients as well. So Kiran, if you can, and again, right, you can make mistakes just like you would deal with a normal right? And what N8N lets you do is visualizes, right? What is happening, right? First, it went to the AI agent. Inside the agent, it uses the Gemini chat model. Then decided, right, which sheet to go. It didn't go to the fake doctor because we explained, right? How did it decide that? Because we kind of explained, right? This sheet is for this purpose. This sheet is for that purpose. So it used the patient sheet, right? And then after using the patient sheet, it sent them data back. So there's a bit of back and forth. Again, you will, once you are more familiar with this, you will see what is happening, right? Now, if you can see the output first, Kiran, you can just show them, right? You have to, again, you can debug this and understand, right? How it got all the data, right? Is it optimized, right? No, it's a very basic thing. It got all the data and then the LLM understood. We're talking about Mohan Lal. So let me get the entire row and give it back to you, right? So again, in a real world use case, right, you would connect it to a data source. It is able, if you kind of define it, how to query, right? You don't have to be a developer. Traditionally, you would have to be a developer to understand, if it's a database, how do I create a SQL or NoSQL kind of query to get the data? How do I map the data? How do I retrieve it? How do I show it? Up to 100 things. In this, all you have to explain to the LLM is to the agent, how do you get the data? What are the various fields, and in what case it can get the data from a certain source. Sometimes it can be a database, again, API, Google Sheets, it could be SharePoint, all those kind of data sources have integration, right? And you can see it's presented the way, right? In a similar way, again, we just have 10 minutes. So I'm just thinking what we should do next. We can add more tools. If you can add a tool, Kiran, right? And see, you can add an email tool, right? You can see, right? Right? So you can see, I'm just going to skip this just in the interest of time. You can use an email tool, right? You can use another trigger, right? You can add any number of tools to this agent, and this agent will dynamically determine, right, based on what its prompt is and what it's trying to do, and the definition of the tool, it will try and pick the right tool for the purpose, right? So, right, any questions till this point, right? Question once the bunch of questions once I integrate open critical data and model. Yes. So question is, Nikhil asked a very important question, right? Once I integrate and open the critical data to N8N, right, or any other model, what happens to the data? Very, very, very good question, right? See, we are showing all of this as a demo. By no means you should do this to production. That's why the agent canvas is there, right? So in this case, the fake patient data is in Google Sheets. First of all, right, like ideally in the real world, you would not have it in Google Sheets. You would have it in a database that's stored on your hospital's infrastructure, right? And before it comes to N8N, right, ideally you would have some kind of anonymization methodology. For fintech and for healthcare, you would not let the patient's name or all their identifiers be sent even to N8N, right? So you would anonymize it. So certain columns only come to the agent, right? And see, if all the columns come, right, in this case, we are using Gemini, right? All the data, let's say patient data, would go to Google's Gemini servers. And we have not set anything up. So it could be any one of Google's data centers, right? Um, right? For a healthcare use case, I would recommend sending, so you can set N8N up in a server in the healthcare infrastructure, right? Like in their data center. You can set a open source model. There are Llama, there is Gemma, right? Bunch of Mistral, lot of models are there which have good licenses. You can set it up in the infrastructure of your healthcare data center, right? Then you set it up, and then what happens is whenever the database is also in the infrastructure, the model is also in the infrastructure, and it is also in the infrastructure. The entire call happens inside the infrastructure, doesn't even go outside, right? And so the call happens and the result happens, and then you get the output. So let's say you have to call a patient, you have to send a WhatsApp message, then it goes outside, right? So always keep in mind if you're talking about fintech, healthcare, all these kind of data, what data is going where, how's the flow of this data happening, are you supposed to send that data outside of India, which data center, all those kind of things would happen, right? So you have to kind of map the path out, right? Uh, So there are questions, why the need for agentic AI use case here. So I'll give you the example here, right? Like in AIMS, right? I think the daily footfall is above 1 lakh. I could be wrong, it's 4 or 5 lakhs on certain days, right? If you see, right, most doctors, you know, after an operation, right, the first 4 or 5 days is very critical. And today, right, a lot of doctors have to call patients and say, right, and a lot of these patients are coming in from Bihar, Maharashtra, going to Delhi for operations, right? For all these operations, right? Like, doctors have to many times call patients and see if they're doing well or not. And if they don't report back symptoms or complications related to surgeries, right? There might be further complications, right? So today, these doctors are doing research, right? Actually, AIMS doctors are supposed to do research in 33% of the time. They're supposed to teach in 33% of the time, and the remaining 33 is around OPDs. But today, what happens is 80% of their time goes to OPDs and surgeries, and they're not able to find time for anything, right? So these are actually real world use cases where today, right, for each doctor, there are 3 to 5 people helping the doctor, and even then things get missed out, right? So, and even then, right, there are not enough doctors in India, right? Not even close, especially in rural India. So today, can an AI agent do the doctor's job? No, but they can help doctors. This is just a very simple example. Figure out which are the important patients they should focus on, how reports should go out, right? Can they follow up and see what complications are happening, right? These are real world use cases based on our conversations and presentations with the doctors themselves, right? We just have 5 more minutes, so I think we'll just wrap up the practical part, but we can answer any questions, right? Questions around, can you give an idea of cost of deployment running this workflow? Very good point, right? So, Kiran, can you go to a site called Open Router? Open Router, just open. Okay, so from a cost perspective, right, there's a good site called Open Router that you can go to, right? You can search for any model. So they have all the models, right? Open source, closed source, right? You can just select any model. So just maybe just select any model. Yeah, just select any model. So Quen is a very popular, model, open source model from Alibaba, right? So see, open source, closed source models have different pricing. Closed source models like the Geminis of the world. Each model has an input and output price, right? It's based on million tokens. So again, it's a little complex, but you can go to this site and see what is the pricing around them, right? Some models are open source. Typically, open source models are much cheaper than models of like Anthropic, ChatGPT, and Gemini's of the world, right? And certain workflows require complex models. Certain workflows requires this text generation or image generation, right? Video generation is even more complicated. So based on the use case, you can figure out which model. For open source, you can even select providers, right? Over here, you can see Alibaba provides it at a certain price. And there's something called Novita AI, which provides a certain slightly different price, right? Alibaba is more expensive than this Novita. For open source, you'll find 20 people providing models as well, like the DeepSeeks and Llamas of the world, right? So again, based on use case, you have to figure out pricing, right? And how many times it's run. Today, there are models from Sarvam and all these others that can even talk to people, patients, and all, right? So voice models are more expensive. Those are calculated differently. For example, Sarvam's models are available in 11 Indian languages, right? Based on whether you want a conversational, like talking in Hindi, Marathi, Odia, and all, right? Real time, do you want, a WhatsApp kind of voice conversation? Every model has a different pricing, right? And based on the capabilities, based on image generation, everything has a different price essentially, right? So that's something we can do. For those of us who are non-technical, what we recommend? So recommendations for all the people who are non-technical as well as technical, I would recommend. So in our workshops as well, right? We done these 2-day workshops. Even there, uh, we have a lot of developers. Almost everybody, we've seen that 90% of people use N8N, even though we show all the options available to them, right? So I would recommend you can go to N8N, sign up. You don't even need a credit card. You can just sign up for a 14-day trial. Whatever we have shown you in the presentation, everything will be linked. Try to set it up on your own, right? That is something which is super straightforward. Follow the same steps, ask the same kind of questions, right? And then also fill up the agent canvas, try to see, use cases, share it with us. More than happy to kind of help you, guide you on that. And then if it works for you, right, set it up on your own laptops, right, or your own servers, right? If you want a production use case, you can set it up on a server. Otherwise, you can set it up on your own laptop. Like there's can you go to N8N, Kiran, on the website? Yeah, you can see on GitHub, right? You can go to GitHub and then install the product on your own, right? So fully open source. So you can. So we recommend doing the trials. You don't have to go through the setup process. You can see if this even makes sense for you, right? Moni? Yes. Yeah. We can answer questions for the next 10 minutes as well. Questions are chat possible with N8N site. You can integrate any kind of chat with this workflow, right? So what we're doing over here is just the workflow building, right? We're using the N8N chat, but you could integrate this with Telegram, you could integrate this with WhatsApp, any kind of chat, right? What is important is the how it's triggered, how the workflow happens, how the flow and the entire process happens, right? Yeah, that is the key part, right? It's not like we're showing you something that we could get out very soon. Right. Next question. Does AI agent? Yeah. So you can integrate. It could be on your website as well. So you could see a pop up, and you could integrate this. Right. Again,
This is
those are
this
little
option.
advanced. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Perfect. Yeah,
N8N by itself, like you can take charge of any workflow, probably using webhook or anything, right? By default, they give you this hosted chart. Also, they give you this embedded chart, right? If you want to just place it in your website, like an embedded, so you can go ahead and use their own embedded chart.
Okay, next question is around Ashita. Does AI agent help getting health parameters of patient? Well, see, any kind of analysis, prediction, screening, diagnosis, right? I could go into the details of all of that, but all of that is, I would say, outside the scope, right? Anytime you're doing anything which is primarily related to a doctor's job, I would not. So you need something called certification to do any kind of AI workflow, right? CDSCO and the various organizations that certify devices and workflows for healthcare interventions, right? So we have created um, uh, an AI oral cancer detection tool. It's called Arogya Arohan. That tool takes photos of people's mouths and kind of screens them for oral cancer. For that, we had to do 2 or 3 levels of certification, right? That is screening. But and diagnosis, you need an even higher level, more complex certification, right? So what I'm trying to say is, um, if you're doing anything which is diagnosis, screening, kind of helping doctors, you need certification. I would not recommend doing it in AI agents because these are not designed to do that, right? Remember, it's just looking at the data and trying to make predictions, right? But anything adjacent to that, helping them set up appointments, anything around the patient's workflow can be uh, can be done, right? So those are, you don't need certifications for that, right? Next question. Yes. So Reddit conversation, yes. So any API that's out there, you can add it as a tool over here, right? Sometimes, you shouldn't add the tool directly, right? For example, you're trying to build a stock market agent, right? There's so much data on the stock market, right? How do you decide what is the stuff that you want to make available, right? So you will have to have a layer that takes all the data from the stock market for the last month or year, whatever, and then there's a layer of filtering or querying, right? So you can figure out what goes into the agent, right? The moment a lot of data hits the agent, right? See, agents, like the LLM, is prone to hallucination, right? What do you mean by hallucination? Sometimes it gives special things outside of its scope. Now, models in 2025, especially in the second half, are getting better at that, right? Prediction is by, so even this year, right, you have Gemini models that have really big context windows. Um, yeah, this is very helpful. And so what happens is, why is this useful? See, till last year, right, most of these models, if you had a long conversation, they would start hallucinating and you might tell it something in the second sentence. By the time you reach the 10th conversation or, like um, 10th chat, it's forgotten what you've told before, right? You would have experienced this. Today, right, models are getting better and better. I'm hoping by next year this will go away largely, right? But essentially, that's why, right, I would recommend not to send a lot of data to the LLM. It just gets overwhelmed, right? So whether it's a long conversation or you're querying a database like a stock market database and sending back 100 results, right? And there are many rows, right? It by the time it reads the 50th, 60th, 70th, 100, right? It would have already forgotten what is happening in the second, third, fourth row, right? So these are things that you have to kind of keep in mind and create a mechanism where you can filter all the data before it kind of goes to the LLM, right? Otherwise, so there's a hallucination problem. You can read about the original paper and how these systems are created is like a limitation for this, right? Uh, so yeah, you have to kind of integrate the APIs, any kind of APIs, you have to figure out how best to integrate it, right? Cool. I don't think we have any further questions. Yeah. So with this, right, like I think we'll just, Kiran, you can stop sharing, right? We'll just end the presentation as well. So give me a second. Yeah, just go back to our slide. We're just at the end, right? I'll share these slides with Mohini and the entire team, so you can check it out. So again, happy to stay connected, right? These are our, LinkedIn. Just definitely reach out to us. We'll be sharing the presentation to Mohini, and all the links over here are there, right? And happy to kind of even have follow up conversations or help you build your own. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So, thank you, Kiran. I think just as like a sounding off and just rounding up the entire session, if you could, I think there was one of the questions just, if you could break down just the mental process of what's the like step by step things to do. Of course, there's a lot we can dive into, but if you could summarize the entire masterclass with just this as one of the takeaways, that'll be really helpful for the audience that's still back on the call.
Perfect, perfect. So what I would recommend, right? We've shown you the hands-on, but before that, right? See, this is the key piece, right? The agent canvas, right? All these are various steps, right? When we are looking at development, we were somewhere here, right? We are showing you how to code or no code, whatever the tools are available. But start with this, right? What is the problem you're facing? How do you solve for it? What is the value proposition of agents? And walk through this entire process, right? And again, just to reiterate, right? Like, see, agents are very smart next word generators. That's what I would recommend. or leave you with, right? These are trying to predict each word at a time, right? So don't like this should answer your question, right? Should I ask it to do any complex tasks? It's not able to do that. Yes, models are getting better. They can analyze and kind of figure some stuff out. But with this, right, like look at this diagram and see, right, what are the various tools you can add, how you can start to think about agents and use the canvas to guide you on creating your own agent, right? Again, reach out to us. More than happy to help you kind of, once you have parts of this also figured out, happy to kind of help you out.
Awesome. Samantha, do you want to wrap it up? I think
Yes,
we've got,
thank
yeah.
you. I was just looking at the poll results, and I have to say, I think those are some of the best ratings we've had for our master classes so far. And on a Thursday evening, to have 55 people still with us after a 2-hour call is beyond impressive. I'm not going to lie. The fact that we've been able to hold people's attention for 2 hours just goes to show how relevant this is for them, and what a good job you guys have done of letting them like understand and learn how they can execute this for themselves. So thank you so much, you guys. This was extremely cool. I for sure am going to try and see if I can automate some of my own community ops for this. And we'd love to bring you guys back for a session sometime, so we can figure out how we can best run this. Maybe a deeper topic, or maybe in a week there'll be something new in the space that could be helpful for our founders. But yes, 2 hours of your evening is well you dedicated to our founders and helping them learn all of this, and we could not be more grateful that you decided to do that. So thank you so much. And yeah, as always, thank you, Mohini, as well. This was really fun.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kiran. Definitely step one. Like a lot of the founders mentioned on chat, there's so much that we can do. So thank you so much for expanding our horizon, and decluttering some of that information to begin. I think we're definitely going to take you up on a follow-up session to sort of maybe dive further deep into some of these topics. But really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for the founders to stay back this late. I understand your time's absolutely precious, but I hope that all of you took back a lot. And at least begin the process of building an agent for yourselves. But of course, reach out to us if you're facing any challenges with filling out the canvas, any challenges with N8N. We're more than happy to help you bridge that connection as well. So thank you once again, and I hope that all of you have a wonderful evening ahead with a lot of curiosity in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Soham. Thank you, Kiran.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Good evening.